Last video, we sailed from the river to the sea. From the river in Guatemala known as the Rio Dulce to the Caribbean Sea. We had successfully crossed the precariously shallow river entrance, and now we were free to start actually sailing. We hooked up our wind vane, our only form of autopilot, which means that we could hopefully take our hands off the steering for a little bit. We're off. We're trying to head north, but you know, the wind's coming from that exact direction. So we'll see how far we can make it north today.
That's not a good sign. All the boats coming from the island means the wind.
Having done several sailboat deliveries in this area and moving our own vessel through the region, we were growing more familiar with this stretch of coastline each time. We cleared Cabo Tres Punta, and once you clear that Punta area, it's very pleasant. It's kind of like the waves subside. We'll probably have to do a lot of tacks to get north. It's smooth sailing. Robbie's fishing. Do you have anything to add, Robbie? Do you have anything to add? Every time we sail here, we can't help but wonder, what was it like for navigators hundreds or even thousands of years ago? Scattered reefs, swirling winds, and subtle currents make this place as beautiful as it is challenging to traverse. Our plan was to stay on the inside, sailing closer to the lee shore to avoid the outer reef system. In simple terms, we didn't want the wind pushing us towards any coral reefs, so we zigzagged our way up the coast until nightfall. Without any luck catching lunch so far, I started making a vegetarian fried rice. Of course, making vegetarian fried rice is exactly how you summon dinner. Cleaning the fish, Robbie made plans for what kind of delicious meal we would have this evening. Thank you.
You spat out the hook! Oh yeah. Monster. 32-inch cobia.
With all the current that's around here and the wind coming directly in the direction that we're trying to go into, we didn't make very many miles today. We made like 20 miles by the end of today. By the time we're gonna stop, we'll have probably made about 20 miles in a, full day, 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. day of sailing. Not the greatest progress. Then we dropped anchor near a small, uninhabited island. Evenings on board an Esperada usually mean winding down with a movie after a long day of sailing and fishing. Fried fish and movie night.
Olive powder, onion powder, pepper.
This time we watched Apocalypto, and seeing it while sailing these waters added a whole new layer. The film paints a picture of the Mayan Empire at its height. Massive construction projects meant to enthrall, escalating human sacrifice, bread and circuses, and environmental strain. At that time, the Mayan people were the dominant power in this region, right before their decline. Personally, I find it regrettable that this Mel Gibson movie is the only one of its kind. It's a big budget, live action, large-scale movie that tackles the project of portraying this part of the world in the classical empire period. It's hard not to draw parallels as we watched it recently, the fall of the Mayan Empire and the fall of other empires.
Yes, what did happen to the Maya? And more important, can the same things happen to us?
At the end of the film, the Europeans arrive, marking the start of another cyclical empire decline. It got me thinking, empires rise and fall. The strong dominate until they fall under the burden of their own weight and consumption. What exactly was their fate? Mel Gibson seemed to believe that the Mayan Empire collapsed because of their heathen recklessness.
Like a lot of the Central American countries did. They have a culture of death, you know. Even Mexico, I mean, they used to, you know, tear people's hearts out and pyramids.
Aztecs.
All that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Aztecs were like the Romans, the Mayans were like the Greeks, but they all sort of dabbled in some stuff. I read a book once by Jared Diamond called Collapse. All the things you need for a civilization to cave in and collapse are present. All those earmarks, the precursors of a collapse, they're present in our time.
Ideas that I think place too much emphasis on whether societies choose to fail. The classic Mayan era, the period when most of those iconic pyramids were built, ended around 900 AD. By then, unsustainable warfare, agricultural strain, and excessive monument building had forced the people in this area to scale back. They stopped overstretching their power. Isn't that kind of a positive thing? It seems to me that they avoided total collapse. Their grand cities, grand theocracies, and large armies faded, but overall their society survived, albeit in a weakened state, vulnerable to invasion and enslavement by aggressive outsiders. And that's exactly what happened. When the Spanish arrived in the 1500s, they slowly conquered the Yucatán Peninsula's remaining cities. Yet they couldn't fully subdue the Maya because of their many small, isolated communities. They were too decentralized to conquer. They held out. And that's why the Maya are still here today. Millions of people speak Mayan languages across the Americas. The Maya endure, resisting and persisting, just like other indigenous people who refuse to disappear.
From their agriculture, we have inherited many important foods. Ancient America gave us corn, beans, peanuts, melons. Even pineapples are native to the American tropics. Ancient Americans gave us peppers, tomatoes, and they gave us potatoes too. And chocolate. The Aztec Emperor Moctezuma drank it every day.
Another question lingers. Did the Maya sail? These are some tracings of graffiti from famous Mayan ruins that depict what look to be sailboats, to me. But these kinds of images are very few and far between. There's no definitive evidence that they used sails, but we know that they traveled extensively around the area in large canoes, paddling goods up and down this very coastline. A handful of ancient accounts hint at the possibility that they sailed, though the evidence remains sparse. Still, sailing these waters today, it's impossible not to feel tied to that history. We zigzagged up the coastline with the prevailing winds remaining unexpectedly in our face. So that's the track we took down when we first came down. Yeah. Nice beam, not reach even. It was on the hind quarter. And then coming up, we had to zigzag all the way. But this gave us time to dry fish and enjoy the flat, pleasant ocean. There was a lot of sargasso weed as usual. When we left Guatemala, the gas station or the propane place where we fill up our propane bottles was closed or was unable to fill bottles at the time for several weeks. We thought, okay, it's okay because we got about a week's worth of propane left, but our propane did not last 1 week. It just ended. Everything else for the trip, as of now, is going to have to be cooked by solar cooker or going to have to be cooked on a barbecue. We'll see which option we're gonna go with more here. And then suddenly, Choco was feeling sick. Choco just did a bloody poop on the deck. He was kind of whining and pacing, and then he did a nice diarrhea/blood, and we're quite worried, so we might end up stopping in Belize City. We'll see. We're gonna monitor him tonight, almost night. We're gonna anchor as close as we can to Belize City and then see what's happening tomorrow. Now he's pretty lethargic. Choco, Choco, you've been barking at the bird? You're not so sick, hey? You're not too sick to bark at the bird?
It's a pew-pew.
Despite the great weather conditions, the nice little bird friend, and the confidence that we would be able to deal with our lack of propane, we were now feeling extremely worried about Choco and his sudden illness. He usually has no problem sailing, and he was perfectly happy and healthy before we set out. We made our way towards Belize City as night fell, hoping for better news in the morning.
Then you can't see that land over there. You can just fly downwind and be there in a second.
He knows we're going to Robinson Key. He's like, yes, please.
He's feeling better, I think, so he's looking better.
Great news! We found our friends were anchored near Belize City too, where we stopped for the night to assess whether or not the dog may have eaten a shard of a fish bone or not.
And from these smiling lands, we can learn much more if we have the will and the courage to understand.
Thank you again for sailing with us, and we hope to see you next time.